Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Nia Cultural Center's African American Read-In. I'm very excited tonight to be joined by Dr. Kenyatha V. Loftis. African American Read-In is a groundbreaking effort to encourage communities to read together, centering African American books and authors. It was established in 1990 by the Black Caucus of the National Council of Teachers of English to make literacy a significant part of Black History Month. The initiative has reached more than 6 million participants around the world. Kenyatha Loftis, Ph.D., creates moments of communal sharing, reflection, and transformation. She uses literature, music, and craft to weave together formal and informal learning across age groups, cultures, subject matters, space, and time. The conceptual framework for her creativity is derived from hierarchical linear modeling, a statistical method used for understanding nested relationships. This means, for example, that Kenyatha's works of fiction conscientiously examine the inner lives of characters and their personal relationships, place those relationships in community, and explore the broader social, emotional, and political implications of those connections. By using the HLM framework, Kenyatha invites readers to reflect upon their own personal journeys, relationships, and opportunities for broader social engagement in the real world. Please join me in welcoming tonight with us for African American Read-In, Dr. Kenyatha V. Loftis.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation to Sue Johnson, to the Nia Cultural Center, and thank you, Tarina, for coordinating my participation in this event. I'm very excited to be with you all and to read some of my works. The topic, if you could put up the next slide, the theme for my read is love stories, and I'm excited to, next slide, share with you from Descato's Dog, excerpts from the Carter House series, including something from The Secrets, Miss Charla, and Harold, and from a poem called This Note. Descato's Dog is an early reader children's book, and the other readings are for young adults and adults. Next slide, please. Okay, there's a little black box. Torina, will you please click it? No, yeah.
Let me see, because it's not looking like, looks like when I click it, it tries to go to the next slide. So let me try to see if there's a different format. Is that the one for music?
Yes.
Okay. What I can do.
Let's see. While she's doing that, Lux Veritas Sankofa. Welcome to the Kofaverse. In the Kofaverse, we affirm that humans are created in the image of the Maker and are very good, that they are endowed by the Creator with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we must, armed with knowledge and understanding of the past, create the future together. And we're trying to play the Kofa theme song for you right now, which was created by DJ Chops and several of our Kofa kids.
So what I'm going to do is see if switching it to a share screen will allow it to play the audio. And you can let me know from your end if it allows you to hear the audio.
Okay.
And it's saying from my end, media not found.
Okay. Okay, let's move to the next slide.
Okay.
So there are, at this time, 18 Kofas. And can we full screen the presentation?
Oh, sorry, it was showing us full from my end. I apologize for that.
No problem.
Switch to.
One of our newest COFAs is Descatato. He is an infinity COFA created in the summer of 2021. It was named by Jet. And this story, Descatato's dog, um, introduces this character, this COFA, into the family. It is Descatato's dog is produced by Elsmer F. Productions. We are local scholars and mentors, unifying research and practice to harvest excellence for the future. Next slide. This book and all of the COFA books are dedicated to our COFA kids. Next slide, please. This is a small production company, so we ask that when you purchase our books, you be respectful of the copyrights. Every purchase counts. Next slide, please. Descatato's dog. Descatata COFA gets a dog. Words and picture arrangements by K. Ellie Mae and Rozzy. Descatata COFA designed by K. Ellie Mae and Rozzy. And what we do with the COFAs is we build and design a COFA, and we ask one of our COFA kids to name the COFA. Jet named this COFA Destacato, which means outstanding. Next slide, please. Destacato gets a dog. Next slide, please. Destacato feeds the dog. Next slide. Descatato walks the dog. Destacato plays with the dog. Destacato bathes the dog. Destacato rubs the dog. Destacato loves the dog. The end. And so this book is about love in action. It is, again, an early reader, and it includes handwriting sheets for each page of the book. You notice the format allows for repetitive reading action. And so we invite you to take a look at Destacato's dog on our website. I also want to introduce you to Bouncing Butterfly, who is the second of our Infinity Series COFAs. Next slide, please. And Bouncing Butterfly is a classified good story of freedom. It's also by K. Ellie Mae and Rozzy. Next slide, please. And it focuses on positional words like up, down, left, right, backward, forward, and around. And so it celebrates movement, the joy of movement, and it is also an early reader. Can you try the black box, Tarina, to see if that one will work?
Yeah, when I click on that one, it does the same. It tries to progress to the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry.
And so those are our very early reader books. They all include activities. We invite you to take a look at them and to get involved in the reading and the movement of the invitation that they provide. The next story I will read from is The Secrets of Carter House. Next slide. The Secrets of Carter House is the first book in our Carter House series, which follows a group of educators, parents, and students in the Houston, Galveston metro area, mostly as they overcome disastrous situations. So this is from chapter 11 of The Secrets of Carter House. And here's the book. I pulled out a new copy so that you could see something crisp, and you can't see it, but sorry for the delay. And I'm beginning now. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and the daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but they are not from you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you. Lauren lets her mobile phone ring long enough to hear an a cappella group's powerful vocalization of Khalil Gibran's poem. This song reminds her of the fine line between advocacy and integrity walks as part of the community. Adults who work with children, educators, parents, community leaders, often forget that children are not simply extensions of themselves. Their good intentions will not always produce the desired effects. As an evaluation professional, Charla has to remind these adults to be clear about their expectations and honest about their impact. Though she works directly with the students on a regular basis, Charla's primary contribution is to ensure that the adults in their lives have the tools and information they need to support children effectively. You can give them your love, but not your thoughts. They have their own thoughts. You can house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in a place of tomorrow where you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You can strive to be like them, but you cannot make them just like you. Dr. Lowe, Charlotte's voice calls through the phone with a subtle urgency. Did you give someone authorization to enter the school? Alarm center called because they are detecting continuous motion inside the building. I'm certain that I locked up, but the wind is blowing something fierce and maybe rattling the doors and windows or something. I'm on my way to investigate, but I wanted to check with you first. Has it gotten that bad outside so quickly? They are so engrossed in conversation in the interior parlor at Carter House that Lauren has lost track of the weather conditions. Lauren tells Charla that she hasn't authorized anyone to enter, and she asked her to see if Mitchell, who lives across the street from the school, will check out the building with her. But really, Charla, if things are getting that bad down there, you should be heading off the island. I'm doing okay down here, Dr. Lowe. Me and this place got a special relationship. I'm just going to make sure the doors and windows are secured, and then I'll head back home and lock myself in. I'll give you a call to let you know what I find. Charla pulls her car into Mitchell's driveway and runs to his front porch as though she can avoid the quickly falling raindrops if she moves fast enough. If these are tears from heaven, there must be a heaven-wide screening of a really sad movie. She bangs on Mitchell's door, trying to outknock the thunderous patter of the rain. A tall vine of muscular chocolate opens the door. A white tank top provides an unobstructed view of well-developed biceps. This man is beyond fine. He is. Hey, Miss Charla, what you doing out here in this weather? He sings in his southern drawl. The cadence brings a smile to her lips. His is the deep rumbling voice that punches you with its concern. Having traveled the world and lived in 35 of the 50 United States, Charla has talked to many men. But only the voice of men from this masculine, chivalrous U.S. South have the ability to stop you cold in your tracks and offer you any aid you could need at the same time. The comfort, the care, the vibrato, and the timbre are Southern. The rich, deep tones, those are Black. Nothing like the voice of an African American man from the South. If Charla isn't careful, she will swoon. Focus, focus, focus. Hey, Mitchell. I need to go check on the school. Alarm sensor thinks there is an intruder. I think it's just the wind roughing up the doors, but I am hoping that you will come with me to walk through the place. And maybe we can put those muscles to use to get those doors sealed tight. She winks and turns quickly, sticks out her left foot to descend the stairs, and slowly turns her head to make sure Mitchell is following. The genteel tease, very feminine, very Southern, very Charla. Miss Charla, wait up. Let me help you stay dry, Mitchell sings as he throws on a light jacket and grabs a large umbrella from the holder behind his heavy wooden door. He wraps a wool blanket around Charla's arms as he presses the release button to open the umbrella. Don't laugh. The words barely register in Charla's mind. All of her being is focused on the warmth emanating from the arms around her shoulders, hard as steel. Charla imagines the kind of gym workout that would produce such a hard body. My sister left this umbrella here when she visited last summer. Charla looks up to see the burgundy fabric dotted with a variety of chocolate candies. It was wet when you picked it up, Mitchell, Charla manages to get out between giggles. Don't worry, it's cool. Now I know what to get you for your birthday. Mitchell adjusts the umbrella, threatening to expose Charla to the pelting rain, but he quickens their pace across the street by increasing the guiding pressure of his arm in the small of her back instead. If this is punishment for my transgression, I can't wait to sin again. Mitchell slows their pace considerably when they reach the school entrance. The front door is ajar, and while that fits with Charla's theory of extremely strong wind, he doesn't want to take any chances. Mitchell closes the umbrella after lightly climbing the stairs and elevates it in his right hand, preparing to strike any potential intruder. Charla follows closely behind. They attune their breathing, slowing it to one hushed rush of air every few seconds. Aside from their breath, The only sound that can be heard is their synchronized footsteps crossing the threshold. And then the unmistakable sound of shuffling across the wooden floor. Charla falls back as Mitchell turns to his right and raises the umbrella higher, preparing to strike. Miss Charla! Charla catches familiarity in the screaming voice, but she can't stop the momentum of her body from charging the short figure. She was planning to reinforce Mitchell's umbrella attack with a few punches of her own. Instead, she opens her arms and converts her spurt of aggression into a hug. Kyle, what are you doing here? How'd you get in here? Charla exclaims with both disapproval and relief. Just as she feels her body relaxing and sees Mitchell lowering his arm, they hear a set of heavy footsteps quickly approaching. Charla flinches reflexively as Mitchell's huge arms swat the umbrella toward the sound. The large figure ducks to the right, and the umbrella strikes the ground. As Mitchell raises his arm to strike again, Charla recognizes the figure that comes into focus. She grabs Mitchell's wrist, surprised at the amount of force it takes to alter the trajectory of his arm. Though his veins pulse beneath her palm, all Charla can think of is preventing him from following through with his attack. Mitch! 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 She says, first screaming, then cooing, then whispering. The tension in his body dissolves with the decrescendo of her voice, as though it is under the spell of a hypnotic conductor. As the urgency dissipates, Kyle runs yelling toward the second intruder, his arms outstretched. Mommy! Carolyn Haynes begins to stutter an apology. We didn't know where else to go, she explains, the strain obvious in her voice. Rain started coming through the window first. That always happens when it rains, so I didn't think much of it. Then the window shattered. I tried calling for maintenance, but the answering service said that the buildings are officially closed, and that's why we hadn't evacuated the island. Charla reached out her arm to steady the visibly shaken woman. Can't tell if she's seeing the aftershock of Mitchell's near attack or the trauma of displacement. I said that we were staying put, that this was our home, and that we'd always stayed for storms. The woman on the other end of the phone scoffed at me. She said that we were crazy to stay on in an officially evacuated island. As I asked her what we were supposed to do, another window shattered. Get out of there, she laughed. Anger seeps through the slits of Carolyn's eyes at the recollection of the exchange. Water rushed into the apartment, and a constant swirl of wind rattled our family pictures, threw our papers into disarray. The kids were scared. I was scared. I mean, would another window give under the mounting pressure? We didn't have anywhere else to go. Charla notices that the emotion now punctuating Miss Haynes' voice is not fear. It is shame, shame that she is in a place of desperation, and shame that the school is her refuge. Charla must admit her surprise that Miss Haynes has the skill to pull off a break-in, but shame should not be a part of this particular equation. Just as Charla opens her mouth to address it, she is interrupted by Mitch's deep drawl. Hey man, what's up? Man, who is he talking to? Charla looks to the left, following the direction of Mitchell's voice, and sees him engaged in an extended handshake operation with Gary, Brandy's father. Taken aback, Charla takes a few moments to process the scene. So who all is here? Charla asks superfluously as 16 little arms surround the lower half of her body. The 7 and 8-year-olds always travel together, and never mind dishing out physical affection. Miss Charla, what are we going to do with all these people? If she must be stirred out of deep thought, Mitchell's voice sure is the right way to have it done. Well, Dr. Lowe said she secured a place in Houston for everyone to stay. You mind driving across the causeway? I know half of these people don't have cars. I'll drive the school bus, and you can drive my SUV. Get somebody else to drive your SUV. I'll hook the trailer up to my Suburban. We can't leave your family here, can we? Mitchell turns to the other adults. Anybody else have pets that I need to pick up? Yes, Charla is attracted to the muscles and the smooth southern drawl, but the thing about this man that makes her heart palpitate is the way he takes care of her babies. 3 dogs, 2 parrots, and a rabbit. She knows her particular crew is better than a house full of cats. But until she met Mitchell, Charla was a little concerned about how her private animal kingdom would play out on the dating scene. The warmth and genuine joy Mitchell displays when interacting with her baby give her hope. If he can embrace her crew, surely some other man can too. Of course, nurturing her crew is kind of his job as their veterinarian. There are other single veterinarians in town, so this isn't false hope. But I only need one, and I am looking at him. Apparently, she is looking at him too closely because Carolyn Haynes taps her on the shoulder and whispers in her ear, "He is divine, but you don't want him to know that you want him." It may have been way too late to unring that bell, but Charla realizes that she doesn't need her students to know this much about her personal life. She can tell that this is what Carolyn means with her big sister style intervention as she follows Carolyn's eyes to a sudden bustle of activity at the games tables. Teenager eyes, parents turned older sister types, the man I haven't quite declared my affection for, and my boss all in the same building. This storm will not be offering the calm of rainy weather contemplation. Thank you. That was from chapter 11 of Secrets of Carter House. The next selection that I will read is from Miss Charla of Carter House. I am reading from the Breba edition, chapter 4 and chapter 5, and an excerpt of a piece I'm calling PQS. Breba editions are an early release publication that I put out when I'm starting a new project. I put out 5 chapters of Miss Charla in the hopes of getting feedback from readers and also to gain some momentum on completing the project. One of my friends says, "Why did you send me this half-finished book? Send me all of it." You'll notice that Miss Charla was featured in the previous reading from Secrets of Carter House, and some of the readers of Secrets really fell in love with Charla and wanted to know more about the story between her and Mitch. Well, I'm following up on that in Miss Charla of Carter House. Here is chapter 4 of the Breba edition. As the limousine came to a stop in front of her house, Charla's mind returned to the present. Friday, March 20th, 2020. She pulled up her face mask, exited the carriage of comfort, and eyed the red soil slung across her front yard. 2,000 pounds of luxury. Charla used her exhales to coax her feet towards the passenger door, contemplating her method of entry as she approached the Lotus convertible. She grabbed the handle, then peeked back at the melody of throat clearing emanating from the limo. She sent a piercing glare to the hecklers as she shook her head slightly. "Ha, Stacy thinks this dude is going to open the door for me. Lauren is hopeful. Kimberly knows better." Charla and Kimberly had gotten to know each other well in the aftermath of Charla's heroic trek leading Lawrence students to Carter House at Houston Central University during Hurricane Ike. Charla had been offered a visiting scholar post at Carter House, where she and Kim often would meet for coffee after Kim's HCU lectures. The Stace, Kim, Lolo trifecta had become a quartet. "Hop in, baby." Stacy rolled her eyes and smirked at the man in front of her, hoping her sentiments would pierce through the fabric. She wanted to be annoyed, but remembered that his willingness to not treat her like a porcelain doll had been one of the things she found appealing about him. Still, he could use a little. "Go ahead, jump in, Miss Charla. I got you." And there was Mitch, left hand at the rear of the car, right hand on the door, forming a cocoon through which she could leap. She hoisted her body over the doorframe, then slowly lowered herself with grace, grateful for her early morning training sessions. Biceps and abs on point. The many layers of her black petticoat rustled as she settled into the seat to the catcalls of her friends in the limo. "So not very ladylike," Charla whispered under her breath in response. "None of y'all are, Miss Charla." Mitch's baritone rumbled softly as he mischievously cut his eyes to the trifecta. Garrison revved the engine, reinserting himself into the conversation. He gazed at Mitchell as he shifted the gear stick. "I've missed you, baby." "It has been too long," Mitchell proclaimed loudly. Charla hid her mask-covered smile with the palm of her hand and inched down into her seat as the Lotus Elise screeched off amidst the peals of laughter from her girls. Garrison weaved through Galveston's back streets, making his way to Broadway. He turned to look at Charla as they sat at a red light. I promised Mr. Charles that I would take care of you. That was a long time ago, Garrison. You're off the hook for that. I talked to him the day before, Charla. He shifted gears and quickly picked up speed as Broadway turned into the causeway that bridges the island town to mainland Texas. Charla opened her mouth to respond, but the wind stole her breath. The day before what, Garrison? She knew that he couldn't hear her because she could barely hear herself, but she also knew what he meant. He waited until she stopped moving her mouth and then opened up the Elise on the bridge. 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds. If she didn't know better, she'd think that his genuine attempt to converse with her had been foiled by the wind. But the silence was no coincidence. The notoriously loud Elise was a choice. The backstreet route to the highway that required a driver's full attention was a choice. Waiting until 59th Street, the last one before the bridge, to drop a bombshell into the conversation was a choice. All very Garrison. Very Garrison and Charla. He declares, always self-positioned to never explain, and she perceives, always relegated to the position of protest. 50 minutes later, he coasted into the Buc-ee's parking lot. Be right back. He hopped out of the coupe, stretched his lanky legs, and strutted the 5 feet to the entrance. He turned slowly and locked eyes with Charla as he lifted his face mask and let his weight fall into the door to open it. Garrison beat the 4 fingers of his right hand over his heart in doubles. For you, Charla. That used to be cute. Garrison returned to the Elise with a bottled Dr. Pepper and a long blue straw. It's yours when you tell me how much you've missed me. Is not a damn bit too little? She wondered. Charla crossed her arms and tapped her pink polished nails on opposite biceps. I've definitely missed Dr. Pepper's service in the sports car of the week. There. She said it all in one sentence. Thanks for the Dr. Pepper. I see you have yet another new sports car, and it has occurred to me that we've been apart for some time. She raised her eyebrows and reached out her left hand. Garrison slid the cold bottle across her palm and tapped the straw on her nose. That will suffice this time, my Charla. He catwalked his way from the passenger door to his own, slacks, coat, and vest in dark charcoal gray and eerie black, because just black is a no-no. Pinstripes. Definitely Tom Ford. She'd learned her sports cars and men's fashions from Garrison's mother. Watch the suit in the car and you'll know how to close the deal. Mrs. McKenna had been right. Charla could tell where in the negotiation space Garrison's head was by his selection of fashion designer, suit color, tie shape, and keyring. And from there, she knew who she needed to be in the negotiated proceedings. Astute advisor, aloof and demure accompaniment, silent arm candy, quarreling business partner, yang to his yin. The combinations were endless, and Charla had always selected wisely. She and Garrison had made a formidable pair. A formidable team. He drove 10 miles south and pulled into a spot where they could watch the shoreline. Platonic parking. In a time of social distancing and business restrictions, this was their best option. The world was strange right now. Remember the Audi TT? I think that was your favorite. Garrison broke the silence. Gray or blue? Yeah, the car color mattered. They reminisced about Garrison's many cars and the associated deal closings. It was hard to pick a favorite car when each one brought you to a deal that validated you. Charla, baby, come back and work for the firm. In what capacity, Garrison? You can head up your own division of the firm and do your thing. Garrison, do you even know what I do? I know what you did with me, Charla. Remember the Clarkson account? Baby, we were magic together. Not just then, every single time. I need you back in my life, back on my team. His eyes were sincere. We'll work on 2 projects together each year, and you can pick the projects and clients you work with for the rest of your time. Garrison, I have my own team now. People depend on me. Bring your team with you. We'll pay 25% over market rate at 2 salary levels above qualifications. Charla contemplated the offer and ran the math in her head. It would be quite an investment and obviously a great deal for her people. Garrison had remembered her mantra. Every successful company is a learning company. Invest in your success. Charla, you'll get a shoe allowance and have access to the car barn, and baby, we can rekindle us. What if I don't want to rekindle us, Garrison? Charla, I'm going to take care of you the way it should have been all this time. Baby, I love you. 3, please, Tom Ford. Hues of black. Red Lotus Elise. Hardzell. Charla slurped the final drops of soda through her straw. I'm out of Dr. Pepper. Pass the Twizzlers. Garrison reached into his man bag, handed over the Twizzlers, and abruptly shifted into gear. You know that wasn't very ladylike, Garrison proclaimed as he floored the gas pedal. You're right. You're right. It's business, Charla tossed into the wind. When the trip back to Galveston was inevitably stalled by a red light, Garrison finally completed his offer. 30 days, Charla. I'll rescind the offer in 30 days. There it is, Charla mused. He only brought Twizzlers to a negotiation when there was a strict time clock. It may not be ladylike to call your negotiation out loud, but it is my responsibility to know if and when there are Twizzlers, chocolates, or strawberries involved. And that was chapter 4 and 5 of the Breba edition of Miss Charla. I want to follow that up with another excerpt from Miss Charla. It, I think, occurs later in the story. Again, this book is a work in progress, but I really like this next section because it talks about love in community with others. When they had completed the finalized plans for their presentation, the students asked Jackie to invite the adults into the space. They enter in groups of 2 and 3 and 4, chatting pleasantly amongst themselves, some plotting this evening's activities, others planning dinner. A few parent couples enter dancing to tunes in their own heads and hearts, and some, it was not a quiet filing in process, and everyone seemed to be happier for it. 15-year-old Franny sang out 3 notes, and the room began to come to order. Soon after, Gregory hit the bass note of the harmonic, and the others in the room found their spot in the chord. When all were in perfect harmony, Franny pointed to Desiree, who bounced a hummingbird run at the top of the scale. Then, Franny cut off the sonic production, and everyone clapped once in concert. Thank you for gathering with us this afternoon, Franny spoke to the crowd. The group would like to make a presentation. Groups, please send your representatives to the front of the room. 2 youths from each age group walked toward the center of the room and formed a semicircle in the middle of the gathering. Dr. Lauren, will you join us, please? Franny called out. And will you please anchor the circle? Anchor the circle, Miss Charla. Anchor the circle. That was their term for standing in the center, providing a center point for reflection and orientation for action. The person who anchored the circle was considered the strongest person of the group because of their vulnerability. The need to keep the anchor from drifting gave the circle its purpose and direction. Traditional rules apply, Franny called out. This was her way of alerting Charla that she could invite someone to stand in the center of the circle with her, as opposed to freestyle, where something else would happen. That is, someone in the audience would select someone. Typically, the anchor would pick someone who was particularly strong in the area of their vulnerability and someone with whom they were particularly close. When Dr. Lauren urged Mitchell to join Charla in the circle, Franny called out, "Remix!" the term used to indicate that a different co-anchor was needed to be selected. It was a gesture of protection for the anchor and a sign of reproach to the initially selected co-anchor. A remix was called when members of the community knew that the co-anchor was not as strong in the area of vulnerability that was needed in this particular case, or when the community had knowledge of the co-anchor bringing harm, disorientation, or additional vulnerability to the anchor than the anchor may have not recognized. What's the problem? Lauren called out. I think that Dr. Mitchell would be a great co-anchor for Miss Charla. In this discursive process, the convener, Franny, the co-anchor, the anchor, and Dr. Lauren were able to speak freely, while Franny would call on others to provide testimony to convey the community's sentiments. The community thinks otherwise, Franny called out, her voice shaking with nervous energy because she really liked Dr. Mitch and she had been rooting for him and Charla as a couple. And also out of anger because she had been rooting for Dr. Mitch and Charla as a couple. Evidence, Lauren requested as the rules allowed. Sam, Franny said, giving the floor to her older brother. Me, Paul, and Justin, he began, but then started again when Lauren caught his eye. Paul, Justin, and I, he shot a look to Lauren, were playing football yesterday when we were supposed to be doing what everybody else was doing. Paul threw a horrible pass. It was too high and too strong, and I ran into the barn door when I jumped back to catch it. It was a bad pass, but I still caught it like I always do. Anyway, I reached to pull the barn door shut when I heard some baying. It sounded like one of the animals was in distress. So then we had to decide, Paul, Justin, and I, if we would let the animals suffer or whatever, or if we would tell someone what was happening, even though we could probably get in trouble. We decided that we would tell Dr. Mitch because we all really like him and he's in charge of the animals. And we thought maybe we would get in less trouble with him than, say, Reverend Allen or Dr. Stacy, and definitely Dr. Lauren. So we go inside, really quiet. And just when we get to the door of Dr. Mitchell's suite, this woman comes out and she's dressed up all fancy like, and she's smiling and laughing, and she seemed nice enough and all. And she was, presentable, but she was there. And then Dr. Mitchell comes out and he's happy, and we just didn't like that. He looks at Paul and Justin for reassurance, and his friends cross their arms and smirk at Mitchell in affirmation. Well, what's the problem with that, Sam? Lauren asked. We just didn't like it. Why was he in his suite with that lady who was not Miss Charla? Well, Sam, boys, it is an office suite. Perhaps he was conducting a business meeting. Dr. Lauren, it's an office suite and it's where he lives right now, like all the rest of us. And there were other places in this building where he could have had a business meeting. Okay, Sam, you're telling us that Dr. Mitchell looked suspicious to you? That he was startled when he saw you, young men, in the hallway, and that he tried to hide? That there was guilt on his face? No, Dr. Lauren, none of that. He spoke to us, asked us how we were doing. He listened patiently while we explained about the baying animal. He told us that he would take care of it and even said that he'd tell you and Reverend Allen and Dr. Stacy that we had been helping him out if it came up. But we don't want him to bribe us to not be loyal to Miss Charla, Paul chimed in, against the rules, but so adoringly in this moment. There would be consequences later. Well, young men, I certainly am grateful that you are so concerned about Miss Charla, but I'm not sure that you are interpreting events correctly. Is that all that happened? Well, no, Dr. Lauren, Justin chimed in. He also introduced us to the fancy lady. She was nice and she smiled at us, but she's not you, Miss Charla. Justin directed his last comment to the current anchor of the center circle. We like you better. Well, Justin, it's just not clear to me that you'll need to choose. Why don't we explore that a little bit? Do you remember the lady's name? Lauren asked as she worked to guide the young men and the community at large through critical thinking and conflict de-escalation skills. It was something like Denise Sam picked up the thread of the conversation. McKenna? Charla rescued him. Did you meet Mrs. Delisa McKenna, Sam? Charla asked with a smile in her voice. Yeah, that's her. Yep, that's right. Yes, ma'am. You know her, Miss Charla? Sam asked. Yes, I do. She is a nice lady, and she's very fancy. Charla allowed some levity to come through in her voice. Mrs. McKenna is a very good person to know. Try not to forget her name, okay? It's Mrs. Delisa McKenna. So you're not mad at Dr. Mitchell? Justin interjected while timidly eyeing Charla. And you're not mad at us for not telling you sooner? He asked when she shook her head no. No, sweetheart. I am so grateful that you guys care about me and my feelings. Dr. Mitchell is a very good friend to me, and you've all just shown me that you are too. Thank you for being such great friends. Why don't Sam, Paul, and Justin co-anchor the circle? Mitchell offered in a conciliatory tone. I know it's not typical to have more than one co-anchor, but there's got to be an exception somewhere, right? It is not actually an exception, Dr. Mitchell. Dr. Brown chimed in. This maneuver is called a key, and it applies when a small group of community members agree to act as one to co-anchor the anchor through the journey. Suddenly, all of the kids were in the middle of the room, abandoning the circle place for external support for the inside of the circle. It was clear that these kids loved their Miss Charla and did not see themselves as separate from her in mission and vision. Taking just a few seconds to process what was happening amongst them, the adults in the room, parents, neighbors, educators, arranged themselves around the circle anchors, and finally they were ready for the ceremony to move forward. It seems that all of our ceremony leaders are co-anchoring the circle, Lauren began, reminding all involved that the circle ritual could not be guided from the anchoring position. I'll guide, Jackie piped in. Looking to Franny, she asked, is everything the way we discussed it yesterday? Yes, Miss Jackie, Franny replied. Okay, let us begin. Left feet, step. The adults forming the outer circle lifted their left legs, then dropped them down 3 inches to the left, while the whole anchoring community moved their left legs to the right. Right feet, step. The community lifted their right feet in unison and then placed them adjacent to their left feet. The community circle moving clockwise while the circle anchors moved counterclockwise. Jackie called the cadence in firm, crisp tones. Left, step, right, step, until each person reached their original spot 3 times. Then the outer circle moved closer to the inner circle, while the members of the inner circle turned to face the outer circle. Once again, Jackie called cadence, and the community members followed her lead. Only this time, both groups were moving clockwise. When they'd returned to where they began, Jackie ended the cadence, and upon her signal, the outer circle expanded, and members of the inner circle walked forward to fill in the emergent gaps. Settled into their new spots, community members linked arms and awaited Jackie's next command. Left arms reach, Jackie coached them. Each member extended their left arm behind the back of the person to their left. Right arms pass, and every member who had convened the ritual passed to their left the item in their right hand. Non-conveners, the adults in this case. I'm going to skip that. Left grab, pass. Jackie commanded. Left grab, pass. Jackie repeated as the collected items moved through the community to their intended target, Charla, the anchor. At each pass command, she would drop the item in her left hand into the bucket that had been placed in front of her. Altogether, there are 35 items, 35 small golden envelopes containing allowances, snack money, and chore salaries that the students wanted to share with Charla. She would never know who gave what, never be able to return it, for it had come from the community, everyone had passed it and given it, and no one wanted it back. The community is whole, Jackie said to complete the ritual, and everyone filed out with excitement and muted chatter about the rest of the day's activities. Thank you. That was PQS. And this final reading are two excerpts from Herald of Carter House and an excerpt from a poem called This Note. Unlike The Secrets, which is available on our website, and Miss Charla, the Breba edition of which is available on the website, Herald is not in circulation. So this is a very rare occasion on which it can be experienced. I hope you appreciate this work. Herald of Carter House, Contemplations on Love in Absentia. The Grace. 10 years. For 10 years, she'd contemplating leaving this. Let me restart. It takes a specific energy. 10 years. For 10 years, she'd contemplating leaving this man. And here he was threatening to take away that choice permanently. Sure, he'd left home off and on throughout their relationship, but because she knew that he would return, whether it was because he had run out of money or been put out by his new girlfriend or suddenly missed his children, she knew that she always was the decider in the relationship, that the continuation of their marriage was always her choice. Now, here he lied, threatening to take away the one power that solely belonged to her. By this time, even her pastor had suggested that she turn her prayers for healing into prayers for peace and comfort. He pitied her, she could tell, for staying married to a man who left her for stretches of months, following his every wild passion, alone, to raise their only child, then 3 children, then 4, for dropping off clean clothes and food at his parents' house every week that he was away, for kneeling at the altar every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to pray for him. He pitied her for wanting a man who didn't want her back. She could hear him praying, "Our Father who art in heaven." He could hear her praying, "Our Father who art in heaven, give us this day." Brooding stare, furrowed brows, crooked smirk. He had to sing a hymn to keep from speaking falsities. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. He didn't petition God for the restoration of their love. He didn't pray that her family would be reunited. He didn't hope her husband would get well. That saved a wretch like me. He was wretched to pray for death, but he did it anyway. Someone needed to intercede on this woman's behalf. She watched him judge her, condemn her husband, grateful because he was too consumed with his own assessment to get an understanding of hers. She needed one more chance, just one more chance to choose. Was blind, but now I see. This time she would choose life, choose love. Please, God, just one more chance to love myself as I have loved my neighbor. She heard the pace of the mechanical beeps pick up, hop, skip, gallop, sprint. She felt them whisking her into the hallway, but not before she could tell him one last thing. Don't you dare die on me, Harold. Don't you dare leave me. Oh God, I just need one more chance. The death. She stood there, surrounded by a collection of mentors, relatives, and friends. His, hers, waiting for him to make a choice. She would have prayed, but she didn't trust that she could pray for what was best for him. And there was the preacher, already, making a plea out of righteous indignation. There he lay, at the interface of life and death, waiting, contemplating prayer. What kind of life will he have with no hands? A musician with no hands. He saw his life in her words, heard his future in the silence, and he breathed. This note. This note is for the man who I thought reminded me of my father, because brains and music and philosophy and love for people, with more than a dash of independence and arrogance laced with humility, but he's his own thing to me. A whole symphony I try to keep up with, that I want written on a page so that I can conduct it. But the notes fly by fast and pick out their own rhythms, and I can't carry the tune because it is perpetually unique. And I want to put it in my music box to hold forever, but it is a symphony to be played at its own leisure, with the instruments of its own choosing, at the time that it selects. It is a song that must be released to be enjoyed. He is a song that must be released to be enjoyed. Must he be released to be enjoyed? This note, this whole note, doesn't begin and doesn't end, played in the key of love, in the time signature, infinity over infinity. This note is for you. Thank you.
This is so beautiful.
And I just want to say thank you to Rosalind Rosie Loftis, who is my co-author and also helps to make these productions go. DJ Chops, the Kofa Kids for the Meet the Kofa Anthem that you didn't have a chance to hear tonight, Divine Grace and a Song of Freedom participants in Galveston for the Song of Freedom preview, the Ellsworth F. Institute for allowing us to use their props, and Ellsworth F. Productions for allowing us to broadcast their publications. And again, thank you, Ms. Sue, the Nia Cultural Center, and Tarina for so graciously hosting and allowing me to be a part of this event. You can purchase, follow, and connect using the information on the screen.
Thank you so much. And I want to share a couple of the Q&A questions. The first is from Amanda D. Curry in reference to the second look at your, yeah, so when is
Charlotte?
What's happening? What's going on? What's up? What's good?
I can see the question. When will the book be completed? Yes. So soon.
Okay.
So I did an intensive write on it in January. There is a draft of 85% of the book, and then we go into editing to make it presentable. So let's say, we're hoping for June. We'll definitely by September.
Okay.
Did I say that?
Well, I will circle back to you in September, when I want to know what your book launch plans are. I'd love to collaborate. I want to get your books into the hands of our community. So I'm going to hop on to this next question for Mr. Jeremiah Taylor, who I was super excited to see participating and joining us for your reading tonight. Who is your absolute favorite character in regards to all the books?
Oh my gosh, you can't do that to me. So there are 18 Kofa kids, and I love each one of them. I've created them with my own hands. And so each is special. And I really have to dive into the character to write the character. So right now, Charla is my favorite because I spent a lot of time as Charla. I put on some stilettos and went to the grocery store to see how that felt. It was interesting being tall for 30 minutes. And so, but I like how they relate to each other. And I like that even though I'm writing all of these characters, they're different. They have different stories. They engage with each other from different perspectives, and I'm always learning more about them as we go along. So sometimes I do things I don't want them to do. So I was writing the end of Secrets, and I was sitting in the restaurant because I was forcing myself to write, and I'm just crying, and I'm like, no, she can't die, but she had to die.
Oh my
gosh. And it was a beautiful moment to watch this character unfold. And I can't not love that character. I can't love that character less than a character that reveals itself to me in some other way.
Yeah, it's a whole world. Like that's really neat. I'm gonna, with our last couple of minutes, and if anyone else has another question they've been itching for, like now is the time, or I'm gonna steal your spot with my question. And if I don't see any more before I start reading this, I'll go ahead and offer my last question. During this read-in, I've gotten to just meet a lot. Like it's my first time meeting you. I've heard your name. I've heard about your work. So it's really exciting and an honor to meet you. And there's so many amazing Black authors like from Galveston that I've had the pleasure of meeting over the course of this month. And it's inspiring and encouraging and also like bewildering to me that I'm just like, how does everyone not just like geek out 24/7 about the amazing authors that come from this community? So that segueing into my final question, what would your advice be if you could give any advice to an aspiring author or aspiring writers? What would that advice be?
Yeah, and it was it's really great to meet you too, Tarina. I had a chance to attend your reading at the beginning of this series, and that was you're phenomenal poet. It was really, really great. My advice to an aspiring writer is to get the words out of your head. Um, and take them in whatever shape, form, or fashion they come. If you are having trouble, typing it out, like handwrite what's coming, to you. If you're having trouble writing, speak it into a tape recorder. The first draft is just out of your head and into the world, and you can work it up from there, or you can hire someone to work it up from there for you. The only space where that work doesn't get to be shared with the world is in your head. And so the PQ PQS that I read, I mean, that's my like super rough draft. So in there I have like put a name here, and there's like grammatical errors everywhere. And I when I free write, I just type. So I start a sentence and I'm like, I shouldn't have started it that way. I don't go back and erase it. I just start typing the sentence that I want to type. And so like that draft I was reading from is like every nasty thing that an English teacher would not want to see. But it's what's required. What I found is allows me to get the story into a space where I can share it with whoever is willing to hear. So just get it out. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for everything you've shared with us tonight. And thank you to everyone who joined us, engaged, and participated tonight. Our next and final read-in will be on the 28th with Mr. M. Gillens. And so I invite you all to join us. And for now, I just want to close out. And again, just so much thank you, Dr. Kenyatha Loftis, for joining us. And we hope to reconnect soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.